What's up, everybody, and Merry Christmas. We're going to record plays for Week 16 of the NFL season on DraftKings and FanDuel. If you enjoy, make sure you have a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're brand new, and let's dive right into it. And as always, if you like what you see on the screen behind me, it's available completely free for a week over my Patreon with the free week trials, projections for both sites, DraftKings and FanDuel, my optimizer, which I will show at the end of this video, ownership projections, cheat sheets going over cash games, tournaments, in my Discord community, which is active 24/7. Really just all the data that I look at each and every single week for every single slate. I do cover showdowns as well, even though I don't post videos for them. So if you want to check it out, like I said, link down below in the description or the pinned comment. Let's get into it here. Let's talk quarterbacks. And we're going to start with this first game here. We have Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys facing off versus Tua in the very fast, Miami Dolphins. 50.5 over under in this game, which is the highest of the week. Only a 1.5 point spread in Miami's favor. 26 point implied team total for the Dolphins. 24.5 for the Dallas Cowboys. This is definitely going to be a very fun game to watch. 425 slots, so I think we're all going to have our eyes on that one. And obviously, there's a ton of elite fantasy options in this game. The only problem is, for fantasy purposes, is that these guys are not cheap. So if you were looking to stack them up, it's going to be very difficult to do so. So you definitely have to find some value plays. So keep that in mind. You do happen to go the route of either of these two quarterbacks, as they're both nearly $8,000, only $100 off in price tag. But we know the upside with both these quarterbacks. They can throw for 300 yards. They can throw 2 to 4 touchdowns. They have elite weapons. You get the ball to and Jalen Waddle or Tyreek Hill, or you have CeeDee Lamb, and then it kind of runs out right there. You also have Brandon Cooks, Jake Ferguson, Tony Pollard, also very nice complementary pieces over there in Dallas. The matchups for either are really not that great. The Dolphins are currently 14th versus quarterbacks, and the Cowboys are 12th. So it's not like the matchups are amazing, but the offenses are so good, they should be able to overcome that. So I'm fine with either of these guys in tournaments. But just keep in mind, if you happen to play Tua, you're pretty much married to guys like Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, and that's going to absolutely decimate your salary. So keep that in mind, because the quarterback you pick is going to put you in a certain direction for the rest of your build, and you might not like the way that ends up looking. Moving on to the mid-range, we have Justin Fields and Jared Goff. Justin Fields loved the spot versus the Arizona Cardinals. Horrible run defense, which we know is Justin Fields' bread and butter. They're also just not that good versus quarterbacks in general either. They're currently ranking 24th versus position, allowing nearly 2 passing touchdowns per game and 240 passing yards. While we don't really care what Fields does through the air too much, mainly on the ground, he should be able to have a nice day with DJ Moore and Cole Kmet. So I think that's an excellent stacking option. You can also run it back with guys like Trey McBride with no Marquise Brown this week. The other run back options at wide receiver are very, very cheap, like Michael Wilson and Rondale Moore. And then Jared Goff is a bit iffy for me because I like him at home games, but this is on the road. We're in a dome at least, so it's going to call it pretty neutral here. But I like the game overall. It does feature a 46.5 over-under, which is one of the best of the week. 25 point implied team total here for the Lions. And then we also have Nick Mullins on the other side with a 21 3/4 implied team total as a 3-point dog at home. But I think this is going to be a great one to stack up. I do think Nick Mullins will have more ownership because he's $1,600 cheaper than Jared Goff. And Mullins actually might not be a bad punt option for cash games this week. Over 300 passing yards versus the Cincinnati Bengals on the road, and gets an even easier matchup, I would say, versus the Detroit Lions, who have a great run defense this year, but they're currently allowing the 4th most points per game, the quarterback position. And there's tons of good offensive weapons in this game. So for the Lions, they have Jared Goff, who's been fine. 270 passing yards, nearly 2 passing touchdowns on the season, which is perfectly fine, I think, at his price point. You know, this is a good offense that can put up points every single week. You have Jahmyr Gibbs out of the backfield, David Montgomery, although he's not too involved in the passing game, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Josh Reynolds. You also have Sam Laporta, who got 3 touchdowns versus the Denver Broncos. And then for the Vikings, Nick Mullins, he is what he is. You have Ty Chandler, who's going to be popular, played this week. Got no Alexander Madison. But where it gets a little juicy here is we have Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkins. It's all laid out for Nick Mullins to succeed in this game, especially at this price point. They're 3-point dogs, so it's a favorable game script. Should be back and forth. So $5,300, I'm not expecting him to get 300 plus passing yards like he had last weekend, but he's got all the weapons to do it. So if he just doesn't absolutely crap the bed, he should be fine at that price point. And then don't forget about Baker here at $6,000. I'm not point chasing from last week's game versus Green Bay Packers, where he absolutely crushed it, like 4 touchdowns, only 400 passing yards. Perfect passer rating. Shout out to Baker. He did his job. It's just a really easy matchup here versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. They are getting destroyed defensively this year. They're on the 2nd most points in the position, over 270 passing yards and over 1.5 passing touchdowns. And this is a big game for the Buccaneers. They're right in the driver's seat of getting into the playoffs as the 4th seed for winning the NFC South. And currently they're favored to do so, but they got to take care of some business here. We'll see if Trevor Lawrence ends up playing. If he does not play, obviously just an easier spot for the Buccaneers to win this game. But I would actually prefer Trevor Lawrence to play, because this game would stay more competitive, I think, than it would be with CJ Beathard under center. Because if Lawrence does play, that just opens up even more stacks in this game. And he's dealing with the concussion. So if he plays, it's not like, well, is he going to be iffy out there? No, if he plays, he's playing and he should be fine. I actually don't hate him for DFS. But as of right now, I don't know if he's going to be in or not. But I like this entire game overall. The wide receivers, the running backs, and even the tight ends, I think, are fine with the quarterbacks. So looking to stack that one up. I know it's a pretty low over-under here at 43.5, but the pieces do look pretty good given the matchups. All right, so heading over to our lineup here. Always got to do my disclaimer because I get comments every single week. Still ask me for like a lineup or something. That's not why we're here. Please do not copy and paste lineups off of YouTube. You're going to lose long term no matter what, so don't do it. You got to think for yourself. But what we do here is I just try to pick a player out of every single position we talk about, put it into a lineup that makes sense for a single entry / 3 max type build, or you can be a bit chalky. I want 2 pass catchers with my quarterbacks unless they're mobile, then 1 is fine. Typically would try to get a run back option just to go for the whole game environment stack, but it's not a necessity. That's all we're doing here. So please don't copy and paste. But the quarterback that I like, that's Nick Mullins. We already talked about him, but he pretty much checks every single box for me. He's in a dome, it's a close spread, it's a high total, he has elite weapons. He's got like a 270 prop over on DraftKings this week. His 1.5 touchdown prop is also reduced to the over. So it's not too often we can get all those same combinations, and it comes out to $5,300 price tag for that quarterback, so we'll take it. And that means we're probably heading towards the Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson route to stack this up. Moving on to running backs. Yes, you are seeing this right. Rachaad White's at the top of the list, and I'm not cutting off any elite backs. He is just the most expensive running back this weekend, so you really can't go anything past the mid-range at the position this weekend. But White is going to be probably one of the more popular options versus Jacksonville. I know the run defense actually has been somewhat solid this year, only allowing 72 rushing yards per game, but they do struggle through the air versus running backs, which is why we play Rachaad White. I don't care what he does on the ground. Sure, but I'd like some usage down there, yes, which he does get. But what I like him for is what he does through the air. Talking a quarter of a touchdown per game, 3.5 catches on nearly 4 targets, and he's also averaging nearly 20 total opportunities per game this year and 12.5% target share. I don't want to make it sound like he doesn't do anything on the ground. He still gets 16 carries, 60 yards, which is fine. Close to 4 yards per carry, which is obviously not efficient. But he gets that kind of volume at this price point, and this is a game that I think can put up some points here. He's just been a model of consistency this season. I was looking at his game log, 21, 24, 19, 16, 17, 17, 27, 17, 15. Like, he has like 3 bad games this year, and they're all pretty much earlier in the season. So I think he's an excellent cash game option. We also have Jonathan Taylor, who is off the injury report, and we also have Zach Moss on the injury report. So assuming Moss misses and Taylor is in, he's going to get all the workload he can handle. This is not a good matchup by any means versus Atlanta. They're allowing the second fewest points to get into position. But if you're going to give me a back that's as talented as Jonathan Taylor in a position where it's been very fantasy relevant this year, if you've been the RB1 for the Indianapolis Colts, you typically put up points. And we know Jonathan Taylor is one of the better backs in the league. So $7,200, I'm perfectly fine with him. If you're playing cash games and you go cheap at quarterback, you could obviously fit both these guys in quite easily. If you happen to go the Dak Prescott to a route, you probably can't afford either, especially with your super expensive stacking options. And then Derrick Henry here, I didn't really like him last week. I mean, everyone likes to play him versus the Texans. I just didn't like where the ownership would be, and he just really isn't that great this year. Like, sure, he can bail you out with the goal line touchdowns, but if he is not getting those goal line touchdowns, Derrick Henry is pretty much worthless so far this season. Like, he's averaging the same yards per carry as Rachaad White this season, still getting plenty of volume, close to 18, 19 opportunities per game, just not really too involved in the passing game. But this is a good spot versus Seattle. Was currently 28th versus running backs, allowing a rushing touchdown per game and nearly 100 rushing yards. So I think Derrick Henry can be in a nice bounce back spot this week. You also have Will Levis banged up, so we'll see if he ends up starting or not. But I do think Henry is in line as a tournament play this weekend, but would not play him in cash games. I'd rather have some more pass catching upside, especially at that price point for a guy that has been inefficient and very touchdown reliant. Tony Pollard, $6,700 with everybody playing the passing attack on both of these sides. I don't mind getting the Pollard here at below $7,000. I realize it's not been a great season for him, but recently he has bounced back a bit, been a bit more consistent in the teens range. It's just he's really lacking those big breakout games that we saw in seasons past. But this game's going to be super high scoring, so if I can get any piece of it, I will try to do so. And if we're looking at how Miami has done versus running backs this year, actually kind of stingy, 7 fewest points per game, but he will be using the passing game, which does open up the floor a bit. Bijan Robinson, $6,300. He had one of the best matchups possible versus the Panthers last week, and he rewarded you with, I believe, 0.4 fantasy points. So it's only up from here, I would think. 4.5 yards per carry in the season, obviously, last week did decimate that a bit, but still 16% target share, and he's averaging nearly 17 opportunities per game. It's another good matchup here. First, Indianapolis Colts, who are allowing the third most points in the position, 26.7 and over 100 rushing yards per game. So if we can get a nice bounce back spot here for Bijan, I love this price point quite a bit at $6,300. Breece Hall of the New York Jets, Obviously, the offense is not that great, but they have a 20.25 implied team total this week, which is much higher than usual for the Jets, and that's because this Washington defense is just that bad. So if there's ever a spot to play any Jets, this is probably one of the weeks to do so. And with his involvement in the passing game, it just keeps the floor high, and we know the ceiling is also very high with him as well. Chuba Hubbard, just on an awful team, but he does get a ton of work, 20-plus carries in 3 straight weeks. I will take the volume in a good matchup versus Green Bay Packers, allowing over 100 rushing yards per game to running backs, and 24th versus the position. Ty Chandler with no Alexander Madison. I would imagine he's going to be pretty popular. Really big game versus Cincinnati Bengals. But this is a really tough matchup versus the Detroit Lions. They're actually allowing the fewest points per game to the running back position, only 62 rushing yards and less than 4 catches and 30 receiving yards as well. So while he's been efficient with the touches that he's gotten this year, 4.6 yards per carry, I do worry about the matchup, and I like the passing attack quite a bit. So if you're trying to get off that Ty Chandler chalk, Chuba Hubbard, Breece Hall, all fine pivots. Moving back over to our build. Even though Nick Mullins is cheap, Justin Jefferson, he's about $8,000. And if I play Hockenson or Jordan Addison, I know they're kind of pricey as well. So I'm probably going to have to save money here at running back. And there's not really that many great spend ups this week. Everyone's kind of in the mid range. So I don't really think it's going to kill us if we do spend down a little bit. So since I'm going with the passing attack, I'm going to avoid Ty Chandler in this build. We're going to go with Chuba Hubbard. And I believe the Panthers defense is also really cheap. So we could have a nice little correlation play there. Them playing at home, and hopefully it's like a sloppy game for the Green Bay Packers. We know the receiving core is a bit banged up as well. So we also have Breece Hall here at $6,100. I think is fine. Bijan at $6,300. I like Breece Hall. I like the Jets this week. Him and Garrett Wilson look like some pretty solid plays. So let's just soak it up here with Breece Hall. I don't think I'm going to get to Wilson, unfortunately, even though the matchup is prime. But if we go that route, we still have right around $5,500 left for the remaining positions, which I think we can work with. Moving on to wide receiver, instead of going over each and every single one, because we're going to be here forever if we did that, it's all reliant on who you're stacking if we're playing tournaments. Playing cash games, some of the better one-offs for cash games this week. I like Garrett Wilson a lot. I think he's too cheap versus Washington, no matter who the quarterback is there. Drake London versus the Indianapolis Colts, I think at $5,100, he's one of the better cash game options as well. You can spend up. Justin Jefferson I like a lot, despite whoever you have at quarterback, $8,100. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think those are probably the 2 safe options. Over there, wide receiver, if you are spending up, DJ Moore's fine, $6,900. And if you're looking for cheap guys in cash games, I am fine with either the Cardinals wide receivers and Michael Wilson or Rondell Moore with no Marquise Brown this week. JSN, even though he's not on here, Tyler Lockett would be fine as well. So those are probably your cash game targets. And for tournaments, it all just comes down to your quarterback. So I have Nick Mullins in my build. Guys like Jordan Addison, $6,000. He looks really good. Justin Jefferson, $8,100. He feels a bit cheap. No, it's not a Kirk Cousins price tag, and I know it's Nick Mullins, but the yardage prop for Nick Mullins doesn't look too far off what we'd see from like a Kirk Cousins. It's obviously a little bit lower, but it's still serviceable. So $8,100, I like that quite a bit if you were using Prescott or Tua, whoever it is. Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb obviously becomes in play, but you are just eating up so much salary. While they're good plays on paper because of the potential blow-up game, it's just really hard to click on their names because we don't have any money left. So that's why I'm probably not going to get too much of those guys, even though they look like good plays individually. But once you stack it all up, it just the rest of the lineup doesn't look that great. Jalen Waddle was also in that same category. If you're playing Baker Mayfield, I think you have to play Mike Evans because Baker Mayfield's going to go off. Pretty much has to do with Mike Evans. We've seen that time and time again this year. DJ Moore for playing Justin Fields, he's fine as a stacking option. Really, if you're trying to use a run back option, no matter who the quarterback is, the ball's somewhere in that offense. But that kind of pretty much goes over everything. And some of these cheaper guys are just like the secondary options on big stacks, like Brandon Cooks, JSN, even though he's not DK Metcalf, it's a good matchup versus Tennessee, and he's obviously at a much cheaper price point. Has somewhat similar upside. So with that being said, let's fill out our wide receiver slots. We're playing Justin Jefferson since we have Nick Mullins. It's either going to be TJ Hockenson or Jordan Addison for me. I think I might go the Jordan Addison route because if I play Hockenson, I'm kind of getting forced into playing a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown, and that's going to eat up a large chunk of my salary. And while I love St. Brown this week, I just don't think I'm going to be able to afford him with what I wanted to do specifically in this build. So let's save a little bit of money. Let's go with Jordan Addison, and that'll save us a bit because we don't have to spend, $84 for Amon-Ra St. Brown. We could play Laporta, who's about $2,000 cheaper. Moving to tight ends, yeah, this is a pretty long list. I don't think we've had this many viable-looking tight ends the entire season, but there's just so many guys that have become pretty solid, and at their price points, all look playable. If you had to ask me my favorites, Trey McBride's probably number one. No Marquise Brown, so he's pretty much the wide receiver one in that offense already. So he's going to just have a more even solidified role. But the dude looks legit good. Like, he makes good plays, nice catches every single week. I'm not sure if I'm going to call him the best tight end in football, but if you watch some Cardinals tape, I mean, the dude actually looks pretty darn good out there. And it's not like he has elite quarterback play. He's played with Josh Dobbs this year. He played with Clayton Tune. remember correctly. We also have Kyler Murray, who's not the best pocket passer by any means. So yeah, McBride's a stud, and he does project very well for me. Better play on DraftKings than he is on FanDuel, nearly $7,000. Also, don't mind Ferguson if you kind of try to go in the mid range with Dak Prescott. Just a cheaper way to get exposure to that team, but pretty much everybody is going to be viable here. But it all comes down to your stacks. Like, since I'm playing Nick Mullins with Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson, Sam Laporta looks like a fine run back option there. A bit expensive, but we know the touchdown upside is certainly there, as we just came off a 3-touchdown performance versus the Denver Broncos. If you're looking for cheap plays, we have Chig down here for the Tennessee Titans. We have Kate Otten, Tampa Buccaneers. It really all just comes down to my stacks, though. I don't really plan on stacking any Tennessee Titans, so Chig is just there if you need a cheap flyer. And then for defenses, you guys know what I do, because you really can't project these guys. You can be the best defense in the world in the best spot. You give up 20 points, you don't get too many turnovers, well, guess what? You just wasted all your money. So better just to try to get the cheapest one possible. That makes sense. Vegas implied team total-wise, usually, or if the matchup's good. But the Panthers at $2,400, being the cheapest defense on this slate versus Green Bay at home. The 36.5 over-under. They're only 4.5-point dogs, a 20.5 implied team total. You can get your interception from Jordan Love and get a sack or two. I mean, that's not bad at the min price point here. So I don't hate the Panthers defense. Not going to have much interest in the Vikings. Titans, not really. The Buccaneers, if Trevor Lawrence happens to be out, I got them projected for 7.3 points. That's 2.8x. That's obviously not terrible. Don't really like the Cardinals, even though they're not projecting too poorly. The Jets defense, so on DraftKings, I could see them being the chalk. Well, maybe not the chalk, but being chalky at least. They're 3-point favorites. They're playing at home. 17.25 implied team total. 37.5 over under. I got them projected for 8.42. That's 2.7x. It's really the price discrepancy here, because on FanDuel, they're the most expensive defense. But on DraftKings, they're pretty much middle of the pack. So obviously a much better DK play than they are over on FanDuel. Browns defense versus the Texans. CJ Stroud's going to be out, so that obviously doesn't look too bad. $3,400. That's really about it. All right, so moving over to our build, we got to finish this off. We have 4 spots, basically $5,000 per player to do it. Factor in a defense, I mean, that's not too bad. So let's just plug in a cheap defense here. We have Chuba Hubbard and Breece Hall. If we want to correlate that, we can either go with the Jets or the Carolina Panthers, which they're $2,400. Just to save a little bit of money for right now, let's plug in the Panthers. If we can afford the Jets, I'd probably not mind switching to them. So that opens up some salary, right around $5,500. I need a Lions run back option here, so we're going to play Sam Laporta. Hate paying that much for a tight end, but we'll just do it for the sake of this build. Now we have $5,000 remaining, so we probably can't get a running back unless you want to go with a 3K wide receiver. So if you wanted to go the RB route in the flex spot, we could play anybody along the lines of like a Bijan Robinson and Tony Pollard. I think all those guys might end up fitting. If you go with Bijan, you're left with $3,700 left. So you try to have to find a punt here. But Michael Wilson of the Arizona Cardinals is fine. Rondale Moore, I think that's a viable way to go. If you want to try to save a little bit of money and go more balanced, maybe we play a guy like JSN here at $4,500. The wide receiver spot, that leaves us $5,500 left, which is not going to make too much of a difference. But instead of playing like a Cardinals cheap wide receiver, you can play a double tight end like Evan Ingram, Romeo Dobbs. We know Jaden Reed's questionable. Christian Watson's going to be out, so he could find himself in a good position here at $5,300. But I'll let you guys use your imagination. But pretty much the bulk of the build here would be Nick Mullins paired with Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. Ran back with Sam Laporta, who I accidentally just deleted. JSN was a fill-in. We have Hubbard and Breece Hall at running back to save some money. Panthers defense, just because they fit. And honestly, that's not a too awful looking lineup for a single entry /3 max type build. And as always, showing the optimizer here to see who's populating the most as of right now. Now, keep in mind, I am traveling to Ohio, so I am recording this video pretty early on in the week, so obviously things can change. I don't think these are final projections by any means. I don't even have the ownership projections up. We also have a Saturday slate and a Christmas slate, so there is a lot to get done as of right now. But I did run 150 with some slight randomness and stacking settings, so let's see what players are popping as of right now, very early on Friday. And it looks like it's Jimmy and Michael Wilson, which I do understand, because when you're not going to have Marquise Brown on the field, it just opens up a little bit of value, especially with the starting quarterback back with Kyler Murray. And if you are stacking up the Bears, you need a run back option. I mean, you don't need to, but with the specific build settings that I have on here, I require to run back. So it's bringing to Michael Wilson a lot, so that's why he's so high, because as you can see right behind him, Justin Fields, the most popular quarterback for me. Then Jonathan Taylor, Garrett Wilson, Cole Kmet likes that stack with Justin Fields. J. Hawkinson, Rashad White, Ridley, Hall. I mean, all these guys we talked about. Looks like Fields and Mullins, most populated quarterbacks for me, which are my 2 favorite this week. So I am in agreement with that. If you look at the teams it likes a lot, Chicago, Minnesota, the Jets, which is mainly just Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. Pretty much only those 2, maybe the defense as well. base. So pretty much everything we talked about, it's an agreement for the most part. I do think these are the 3 best games for fantasy purposes so far this week, or these 3 games. So yeah, it looks like we're not really in disagreement here. Maybe a couple things. I didn't really see DJ Moore popping too much. He's a little bit lower in the list there, but I do like him this week. So one of those things where maybe you just gotta force him in there if the projections don't like him as much. But with that being said, that's all I got for today's video. So hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure you like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you have any questions, leave them down below. I'll be more than happy to answer them. I wish you all a Merry Christmas, and I'll see you all next time.